Member for Fredericton-South and leader of his party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pleased to rise on Bill 120, an act respecting community funding. A complicated and contentious issue, Madam Speaker, with lots of detail, lots of implications for different kinds of municipalities, rural municipalities, our villages and towns, our cities. And Madam Speaker, that's why we tried to get unanimous consent on our motion to debate our motion on inviting witnesses to Economic Policy Committee when we get to the committee stage of looking at this bill, because it is important. The details are important. We have to get it right, because with respect to community funding, it does come down at its very fundamental level a question of fairness. Will this fairly treat the various types of municipalities we will soon have in New Brunswick and meet the needs they actually have to serve their citizens? And reviewing the bill, it's not clear that that's the case. There are a lot of questions, and we need to hear, we should have the ability to hear from the municipal associations representing Francophone, Anglophone municipalities and the cities to get their responses to our questions, Madam Speaker, so that members are in a better position to properly consider this bill, consider possible amendments, and cast their votes on it. But no, Madam Speaker, the Cabinet and the Premier decided this is something that they don't want to debate, whether or not to invite witnesses to a committee stage. I don't know why they don't want us to do our work in this House. As private members, that's what we're supposed to be doing. The place where we meet New Brunswickers in between elections and engage them in the work of the Legislative Assembly is at committee. But if we don't have the opportunity to invite New Brunswickers with a clear interest in a particular bill before this House, then they're unengaged. They're on the outside. And that leaves private members in this House with the inability to inform themselves in the way that actually is necessary to make a wise, let's say, and informed decision on whether the bill is adequate, whether it needs amendments in any way, or whether or not to support it. So, Madam Speaker, this has been the trend for some time in this House. I look at other parliaments in the country, other legislative assemblies, the House of Commons, Westminster in the UK, the Parliament of New Zealand, and so on. It's not the way they work. Private members actually have some authority working collectively together within standing committees to carry out the mandate of the Legislative Assembly, the legislative branch of government, to exercise some authority over what's transpiring, Madam Speaker. But in a majority government situation, if all of the members on the government side are going to go with the Cabinet and Premier's wishes, then that usurps the authority of this Legislative Assembly in a nasty way. So, Madam Speaker, we know that, and we've already heard in the media and seen some letters recently to all MLAs from the various associations representing municipalities about different concerns that they have. And they're different concerns, Madam Speaker, because the old system treated municipalities of different sorts differently, and municipalities of different sorts have different needs. The new rural municipalities and the existing rural municipalities have different needs than the city of Memramcook, the town of Sackville, the town of St. Stephen, the town of Beldoon have different needs, or the village of Beldoon have different needs than those others. So to ensure that there is fairness built through, in a sense, integrated into the DNA of this bill, members of this House need to be able to do their job. And that means being able to consult and hear from witnesses and ask them questions. So, Madam Speaker, this bill raises, the way the community funding is structured in this bill, raises some concern about potential erosion of equal opportunity. The advances that were made many years ago by Louis G. Robichaud, because it's going to set up a situation where the conditional grants, the grants that are project-specific, to meet needs that are not covered by this community planning, this community funding bill, will open up the situation to political bias. One-on-one negotiations, discussions with municipalities seeking conditional grants to do specific things that they need to do in their municipalities that the community funding that's imagined in this bill will not cover. It is, Madam Speaker, passing strange that over the years, since 2018, this government has refused to undertake comprehensive property tax reform. Same thing with the previous government, refused to undertake comprehensive property tax reform. Same thing with the previous government when the finance minister, the current premier was finance minister, refused to undertake comprehensive property tax reform. This is an important piece of this picture when it comes to discussions around community funding. But we haven't got property tax reform. We've got little incremental changes to property taxes, breadcrumbs that the Minister of Local Governance Reform has thrown out on the floor to suggest that's significant when it's not. What it would be significant is if we had comprehensive property tax reform, Madam Speaker, and that's just not here. It's promised in the future, but we need it. We needed it before we got into this, actually, and we need it. It should have been part of this process, and it's not. I mean, you look at the impact of these changes on community funding and equalization for next year. Baldoon, for example, sees a loss of $18,495 from their core and equalization grants. And they have very little growth in their tax base, 0.6%. So shy of raising taxes, which most municipal governments do not want to do, they have little additional property tax revenue, $24,000. So this is a problem for Baldoon, Madam Speaker. As one example, is this fair to Baldoon? Does this meet Baldoon's needs? When most municipalities, I would say all municipalities, were looking from these reforms for additional revenue overall to meet growing demands on their budget. They can't run deficits, and the demands are growing in many, many municipalities because of growth in some cases, because of the need for increased services in other cases, because of growth in issues within their population, or in some cases both, because of growth and because of the need for increased services beyond those that are required to address growth. So this doesn't do that, Madam Speaker, and relying on this temporary increase in property assessments because of this temporary boom we've seen doesn't make any sense. It's not wise. This needs to be a structural change, systemic change that makes sense on its own merits, Madam Speaker, and not propped up by a passing sort of temporal situation with increases, significant increases in property assessments because of the market that was a result of the pandemic, Madam Speaker. So to lean on that, to say everything's going to be okay, don't worry municipalities, is just a crutch. it's just a crutch and a distraction from the issues at the core of this bill, Madam Speaker, as to whether or not they are fair and equitable and meet the needs as they are defined by our various types of municipalities. And I don't see that this community funding is doing that, at least not without further discussion and questioning of those most affected. Rural municipalities or towns, villages, and cities. And that's what, as members, to properly investigate this bill and study it at committee stage, we need access to. Simply asking questions to the minister is going to get us nowhere, as we've seen during question period in this House over and over again. He just defends what he's put forward, and so there's no real examination, no real meaningful discussion or substantive discussion, and that's not helpful to the work that we were elected to do here, Madam Speaker, and that's what we should be striving to carry out. So, Madam Speaker, we will get to committee stage, and unless there's some miraculous change of heart on the side of the Premier and the Cabinet, we will get to committee stage without the ability to question witnesses, to hear from the municipal associations at all. And that's going to handcuff MLAs in looking at this bill, in determining how to move forward on this bill, which is our job. So it's a sad day, Madam Speaker, really, that that very democratic process is being denied, is being blocked by the refusal to debate our motion to seek unanimous consent for that debate, to invite witnesses at committee stage to help us as MLAs properly examine this bill, understand all the implications through the lens of fairness, through the lens of equity, through the lens of differential needs across the province. Madam Speaker, as we know, we're a small province, but we're very diverse, and the needs are diverse. And we don't want to get into a situation, Madam Speaker, once again, where different parts of the province are divided from one another, where rural and urban, discord is amplified, where city and town and villages discord are amplified. We understand the needs are different, but the overarching need is for fairness and equity, and to meet those needs of those different types of municipalities. And so, Madam Speaker, we'll be certainly pursuing that much further and in detail at committee. Thank you.